A well-tied tie is the first serious step in life. There was a time when you couldn't find a suited man without a tie. Once a requirement, but now optional. Times have changed. That being said, today's speech is a step-by-step process on how to tie a tie. I will demonstrate the 16-step process on how to tie a Balthus knot. Here we go. Step 1. First, lay the tie around your neck. The wide, thick end should be on the right side. The narrow, thin end should be on the left side, with the stitches and seams facing upwards, out, and forward. Step number 2. Cross the narrow, thin end over the thick, wide end. The wide, thick end should be on the left side. The narrow, thin end should be on the right side, with the stitches and seams facing upwards, out, and forward. Step number 3. Bring the thick, wide end up and towards the center of the neck loop. Step number 4. Tuck the thick, wide end through the neck loop gap between the collar and the necktie. Step number 5. Pull the thick, wide end down and under the thin, narrow end through the neck loop gap between the collar and the necktie and to the right side, forming a knot, with the stitches and seams facing upward, out, and forward. Did you know there are over 100,000 ways to tie a tie? That's a lot, right? On to step 6. Step number 6. Bring the thick, wide end up and towards the center neck loop gap. Step number 7. Tuck the thick, wide end through the neck loop gap between the collar and the necktie. Step number 8. Pull the thick, wide end down and under the narrow end through the neck loop gap between the center and the necktie and to the opposite left side, forming a second knot, with the stitches and seams facing upward, out, and forward. Step number 9. Once again, bring the thick, wide end and up and towards the center neck loop gap. Step number 10. Tuck the thick, wide end through the neck loop gap between the collar and the necktie. Step number 11. Pull the thick, wide end down and under the thin, narrow end through the neck loop gap between the collar and the necktie, forming the last knot, with the stitches and seams facing upward, out, and forward, and to the right-hand side. Here's a fun fact. The origin of the tie dates back to the 17th century, the brainchild of Croatian mercenaries hired by King Louis XIII during the French War. It's crazy, right? Step number 12. Now let's create the loop to finally tighten these knots. To do so, pull the thick, wide end horizontally around the front of the knot. Step number 13. Bring the thick, wide end up from beneath the tie towards the center of the neck loop gap. Step number 14. From underneath, pull the thick, wide end through the neck loop gap between the collar and the necktie. Step number 15. For the last time, take the thick, wide end, tuck it down through the horizontal loop in front of the necktie you just made in front. Step number 16. Finally, pull down the wide, thick end through the horizontal loop on top of the knot and slowly pull to tighten. Slide the knot up to adjust and tighten further if necessary. There's no denying that a tie makes you look professional, confident, and like a gentleman. Neckties have always been symbolized order, nobility, and honor. They leave a lasting impression and they make you look good. If you're someone who wears a tie, even though the colleagues don't, you're the real MVP. Stay classy, my friend.